Hi everyone, I'm Nick James and this is my review of the PRS Silver Sky. The PRS Silv Himmel. The PRS Silvern Licht. The PRS Ciel d'Argent. The PRS Silber de Himmel. The PRS Shiruba Asuka. Anyway, that's enough of that. The PRS Silver Sky. Let's dive straight into it and hear this in a full track. All the parts are played on this guitar with a Fender Mustang bass. Doing the bass parts, Easy Drummer 2 for the drums, recorded on Ableton Live, and the amp sounds are from Bias FX Pro. So yeah, let's dive into that and then we'll be back in a minute. So, this guitar is probably the most talked about guitar in the world for 2018. Lots of people have made their mind up about it before they've tried it. I'm sure the marketing guys would say people talking about it in a negative way, which they have been, is still people talking about it. What's the fuss? You know, it's a 3 single coil S-type guitar. I'm not going to say S-type. It's a Strat style guitar, let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. It's the new John Mayer signature guitar made by PRS as opposed to Fender. He famously left Fender and moved to PRS, I think it was 2017 or 2016. Either way, this has been a couple of years coming, and it was no great surprise when it was launched. So as I say, Strat style guitar, 3 single coil pickups, 3 knobs, tremolo, maple neck with a rosewood fingerboard. No huge surprises. Let's start at the headstock end. So we haven't got PRS's usual headstock. It's, some people might say, a slightly awkward looking headstock, but what they've done is they take a left-handed PRS trem and they've moved the treble horn 15mm forward, and I couldn't understand why until I put it on a wall hanger. It hangs at exactly the same angle as a Fender Stratocaster headstock. So I'm guessing Mr. Mayer wanted the same feeling here that he gets from his Fenders on a PRS, and that's how they've accomplished that. So we've got a 3-piece maple neck. There's a scarf joint there, and then there's a couple of little ears glued on either side to make the width. We have PRS's Phase 2 locking tuners with oddly grey plastic buttons, which, you know, beauty in the eye of the beholder and all that, but they look a bit cheap to my eyes, and they feel a bit cheap. They feel like the kind of plastic you get on a budget car on the dash. But they work and they hold the tuning well, and that's the main thing. You've got a departure from PRS's usual truss rod cover here. It's a recessed smaller one, so you can do all the behind the nut bending. The fingerboard is a nice slab of dark rosewood with a 7¼ inch fingerboard radius, which is Fender's very, very traditional fingerboard radius. And Fender actually see it as a bit of a relic now. They don't even offer it on their American original, which are the vintage reissue guitars. Those have moved to a 9½ due to player feedback. But PRS have chosen a 7¼ with tiny, tiny frets actually. They're noticeably smaller than PRS's usual fret wire. So all in all, it's a very, very different playing feel to a regular PRS on the fingerboard. The neck is a nice chunky C shape, and the neck, I'm not going to beat around the bush, the back of the neck is the same as the Fender John Mayer signature strap, even to the point where it's got gloss on it, which you will either love or hate. It's not the stickiest gloss neck I've ever played, but it is still glossy. Just back onto that fingerboard radius. Try as I might, and I don't know how they've done this, I haven't been able to make it choke out with a big bend. Even whole tone bends on the high E string, it doesn't choke out. And that's one of the biggest criticisms of a 7¼ inch board, is that when you do those big bends, it chokes out. How they've achieved that, I don't know, whether it's just a clever setup, and whether it'll survive the first string change, or if you go down to E flat or whatever, I don't know. I haven't assessed that. It's lovely for chords. Really follows the curve of the hand nicely. So to the body, it's older. It's finished in a modern poly finish. It's available in 4 fairly safe colours, let's be honest. 3 of them are monochrome. You've got white, you've got grey, you've got black, and then you've got this rather nice red. 3-ply strap style pickguard. A very PRS feature is this chamfered cutaway. Just lets you get your hand in there a little bit easier. And then on the back you've got a curved neck joint. It's not recessed or anything like that, but it is curved, so there's just a bit less bulk, and the big fat corners you normally find on Strat aren't there. I own 3 Mexican Fenders, and the neck pocket on all 3 of them, so this bit here, is tighter than a nun's chuff, if you'll pardon the phrase. However, I don't know how well this is going to come on camera. On the Silver Sky, it's about 1 millimetre between the neck and the body. So I'll post some pictures of this as well. So there's a big gap there, but I'm not going to force it in too far, but I just want to illustrate this. It's big enough for a 1mm pick to fit there. Now I had to look at some other Silver Skies, and they're all like it. Now I've run this past a tech, and he reckons it won't affect the stability of the neck. However, on a £2,300 guitar, that gap shouldn't be there. So that's a point off for that, I'm afraid. It just shouldn't be there. The machining, the tooling, the hand sanding, whatever, should be good enough on a nearly £2,500 guitar that the neck fits the neck pocket properly. So, moving on. We've got 3 traditional single coil pickups called the 635JM. Master volume, tone for the neck in the middle, and a tone for the bridge. Not anything groundbreaking there, but every Strat needs a tone control on the bridge pickup. There's no excuse for not having it anymore. And then 5-way switch in the traditional bridge, middle, neck, and then the in-between positions. Another departure for PRS is a traditional 6-saddle stamped trem with 4 springs in the back, and a traditional Fender style trem. Interestingly, it's decked flat to the body. Now I've played a lot of strats, and I know if you set the bridge flat to the body and you want to use the trem, it won't return to pitch. So I've not tried the trem yet, so we're going in together. Let's just check. So we are bang on in tune. So let's. It's quite spongy at the start of the treble. So it's spongy at the start of the treble and then gets very tight very quickly. So the first press doesn't seem to do anything. So there we go. Almost feels like a Jazzmaster trem rather than a Strat trem. Okay, we have tremmed. Let's see. So E is sharp. A is also sharp, D is very sharp, G is very sharp, B is very sharp, and the high E is slightly sharp. So as I suspected, you've seen it for yourself there. After just a few seconds trem use, the guitar is unusable. Yeah, I couldn't carry on a song like that. So we're back in tune, and just before we get the comments, well, how do we know they're not new strings, blah blah blah. I picked this guitar up 2 weeks ago and I've played it a lot, so these strings are well bedded in. That was a genuine experiment and the results a little bit disappointing. One of the things I love about PRS Customs is just how stable the trem is. It's almost like a Floyd in how you know you can abuse it and it'll return to pitch. Bear in mind it's got the same phase 2 lock-in tuners as a custom, so the variable is this, and it works like a vintage 6-point Fender trem, which is to say not very well when it's set flat to the body. If it was floating it might be slightly better, but again I haven't had the chance to do that as a control. So if we do some of the bits from the song that you heard earlier in isolation, we'll start on the bridge pickup. Bridge and middle. Middle. Middle and neck. And finally the neck. So I'm not going to lie, I love the pickups on this guitar. They've got a bit more power perhaps than a really vintage Strat, but they sound phenomenal. They've got that beautiful mid-range scoop that a good Strat should have. A bit of bounce, a bit of springiness, a bit of responsiveness, and they're simply wonderful. If I could end a review there on the pickups, I would, because they are simply superb. In typical PRS fashion, you can't buy them as aftermarket, you have to buy the guitar if you want the pickups. At the moment, who knows what the future will hold there. So let's do the same with a bit of gain, start on the bridge with the tone on full. You might remember I said earlier that every Strat should have a tone control on the bridge pickup, and this is why. So I'll turn it down to about 6.5, 7. So still on the bridge pickup, sounds so much better with distortion. Thicker, fuller, more humbuckery, if that's a word. And if it isn't, it is now. So, tone back up to 10 on the bridge, and this is the bridge and middle pickup. And we'll do the same again. We'll put the bridge tone down to about 6.5, 7. The other one's still on 10. So again, thicker, fatter, just a great rhythm tone with gain. Middle pickup. Middle and neck. And finally the neck pickup. Great pickups. Really impressed with those. So this isn't PRS's first time to the 3 single coil rodeo. Examples include, but aren't limited to, the original EG, the 305 and the DC3. The EG3 was probably the most Strat-like of them all, a traditional 3 single coils and aesthetics, but with PRS tweaks, like the proper stable PRS trem, a fingerboard radius that more players are going to prefer more of the time, and PRS fretwire. However, they stopped making the EG as they claimed they were losing money on everyone they sold. The 305 was the most PRS of them all. It played and looked like a proper PRS, but many people were put off by the pickups, which sounded more like P90s than Strat-style single coils. It wasn't a big seller and was discontinued just a few years after it was introduced. The DC3 was, well, it was a bit of an oddball, and again, wasn't a big seller, so it was discontinued shortly after it was introduced. For me, the pinnacle of the PRS 3 single coil guitar was the short-lived private stock Chesapeake 7. This is an absolutely breathtaking example of a 21st century redesign of the Strat platform. Now, they're rare, but if you're lucky you can find examples on the used market for similar money to a new Silver Sky. Joseph Knaggs took the right to this design when he left PRS, and it's now available from Knaggs Guitars for just £400 more than a Silver Sky, and it's handmade by the entire original PRS private stock team. You can get it in 2 formats, the 7 with an 8.5 inch radius and normal frets, or in 7X, which has the 14 inch radius and, you know, bigger frets. As it's a semi-custom build, the options are almost limitless, although the price can rise quite quickly if you get carried away with the options. So I then got to thinking about what was the Silver Sky's direct competition. The Sir Classic Pro is almost exactly the same price, but if you've got a Strat Spectrum, it's almost the polar opposite of the Silver Sky. The Sir Classic Pro is a Strat that's modernised in every way, whereas the Silver Sky has got a unique combination of vintage and modern features. Looking at the current Fender catalogue, the pinnacle of the factory range, and nearly £400 less than the Silver Sky, is the Eric Johnson Strat. But again, it's a very different guitar. It's a vintage-inspired instrument in full nitro lacquer with a Gibson-style 12-inch radius fingerboard. So the Silver Sky might be dangerously close to the boutique market in terms of price, but it's actually an off-the-shelf production line guitar. It's got a combination of vintage and modern features with a blue-collar working man's vibe to it. Therefore, the closest competition from the Big F is actually the American Pro Series, which comes in at £1,000 less. The wiring setup the same, both have got wonderful pickups, both have modern poly finishes. However, the Fender comes with a hard case, has a wider choice of colours, you can choose old or ash body, and you can choose maple or rosewood fingerboard. It's also got a fingerboard radius and fret wire that more players are going to prefer more of the time. So even if you budget £80 or so for a set of the wonderful Goto SD91 auto-locking tuners, you've still got enough left over for a foreign holiday. The big question for me is who's going to buy the Silver Sky? Well, Maya fans will, existing PRS users will, and indeed they are. Other than that, I'm struggling to see a market. And frankly, I also think some existing PRS players might find the playing experience too different to their customs, their single cut semicatis, to enjoy the playing experience of the Silver Sky, but only time will tell. I'm not going to lie, this is the first time I've ever struggled to reach a sensible conclusion about a guitar. I like the Silver Sky because I like strats, and this is a good strat. I like the Silver Sky, but it's simply too much money for what it is. In addition, I think it's too derivative for a brand with PRS's ethos and heritage. Despite PRS's claim that they've redesigned everything from the ground up, I'm struggling to see exactly how they can stand by that claim. Now, PRS got it right with the SC594. It wears its Les Paul influence clearly on its sleeve, but it's got PRS's playability and it's got PRS's sound. It sounds very different to, for example, an R8. The SC594 is less compressed, more dynamic, fuller, wider frequency response. I think everyone was hoping the Silver Sky was going to be similar. Paul's take on a Strat with PRS improvements. Whether it's because Maya insisted on a generic Strat or whether Paul's just given up, I have to say the Silver Sky is just a little bit disappointing. The production flaws such as the neck pocket, the poorly set up trim, and the cheap and tacky looking tuners are all bizarre. But my conclusion is that the Silver Sky is not what I've come to expect from the PRS brand. And I'm left with the feeling that it could have been so much more than the end result. So anyway, I've been Nick James. I hope you found this video useful, informative, enjoyable, whatever. If you have, please like, subscribe, share, check out my Facebook, check out my Patreon, and I'll see you next time. Bye!